and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight, we're joined by the host of the YouTube show, The Michael Cohen Show, and Substack creator, Michael Cohen. Michael, I got to be honest with you. The bingo card for 2026 was not that we would be sitting down together and having a conversation, but you actually reached out to me, which I really appreciated. I don't think you and I have talked in 10 years or so.
9 years to be exact.
There you go. In 9 years. Okay. And you kind of reached out very frustrated to me yesterday. And I said, why don't we sit down and talk? So why don't you tell me what's been going on with you and why you felt compelled to come out and really, talk here on this platform of my podcast?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that's clearly happening right now in the country. There's a lot of stuff that's happening with me personally, where, believe it or not, my own Democratic Party has started to pull away from me because I refuse to answer into a narrative that ascribes to their ideology. But the reason I reached out to you, and I was so thankful, Lara, to be honest with you, that your response was so gracious. I mean, it is 9 years since we used to sit down and engage in conversation. Somewhere along the way, we as a society have allowed politics, right, to convince us that if you sit down with someone who maybe holds a different view, well, then it must mean that you agree with them on everything. And that's simply, obviously, not so. And that's not how democracy works. And so I thought that having a conversation with you would be something worthwhile.
Yeah, I actually think, you and I probably first met, Michael, if I'm not mistaken, through the Eric Trump Foundation, through my husband's charity, which, you used to be a part of. You'll be happy to know, by the way, that we just made a pledge for $50 million to St. Jude. We have built out an ICU and surgery suite. But I'm going to start there.
Actually, Lara, I hate to say it, you and I met way before that.
Did we meet before that? But we spent a lot of time at ETF.
Lara, it was even before you were dating Eric.
We dated for a while. Yeah. But listen, what you're talking about, I think, is so important. And if I think back to the time where you and I probably spent a lot of time together on that charity.
I miss those days.
I miss those days too, because it was great and we had a great time and we raised money for a great cause. And I saw almost immediately how politics played into that, how people attacked a charity that did incredible work, that continues to do incredible work, right? You saw that firsthand. I think that the question right now for a lot of people what you said was very nice. The reason you're here and the reason that you wanted to have a conversation with me is it seems like have been feeling a lot of pressure and almost like you've been canceled in a way by Democrats who at one time embraced you because you refused to go along with their narrative as it relates to Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump. So what is it that they're trying to get you to say, or what is it that they've been asking you to do, or certain people, I guess, have asked you to do?
So it's on both Substack, it's on YouTube, it was on every single social media platform that I have and I am currently subscribed to and that I participate in as a host and a creator. They want me to say, and I refuse, and I mean it, and I've said this many times, I refuse to embellish, I refuse to distort, I refuse to lie about what I actually know regarding the alleged relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and the president. Now, remember, I go back with President Trump to 2007, and I spent actually a year prior to that when I was a partner over at Phillips Nizer. I spent almost a decade and a half by the man's side. And there's a whole group of people that unless you say the worst, when you refuse to participate in that narrative, well, whether they do, they attack me instead. And the false claim that I'm being attacked on every single day is that I threatened, that I coerced, that I intimidated in order to get a withdrawal of a case which was called Katie Johnson, which is also known as the Jane Doe 1 case in my specific matter. Katie Johnson was one of the Epstein survivors that claimed to have had a relationship or a sexual relationship encounter with the president. And that is simply untrue. In fact, this thing got so out of control thanks to Joy Reid. I couldn't believe it. Thanks to Joy Reid, I was successful in getting in touch with the attorney who actually represented Katie Johnson / Jane Doe 1, who publicly stated, sent me a text message stating, I have never worked with anyone named Michael Cohen. But the problem here, Lara, is that during the more than the decade that I worked with the president, I've said this and I get attacked for it. I never saw Jeffrey Epstein in the office. I never heard him on the speakerphone. I never saw communications between them. I never communicated with Jeffrey Epstein, never emailed him, never spoke with him, never texted him, nothing at all. They simply want me to invent facts for a political narrative, and I refuse to do it.
Well, I have to say good for you. I think it's so important, and I think the fact that you were willing to come out and say that very publicly, obviously you have a lot of platforms. You have your YouTube show, you have your Substack, which, by the way, I read a lot on your Substack last night, and I want to talk to you about some of that stuff too. But I imagine at a certain point, Michael, look, it's been a crazy time. You know, the fact that you and I haven't spoken for 9 years, except for yesterday morning and now today, that's terrible. And I hate that. And I hate that we've gotten to this place in our country. But you kind of, I imagine at this point, must feel with all the pressure you've gotten from the Democrats, I assume from the media, that you've kind of been used as a tool to some extent just to simply attack Donald Trump, but also to just promote a political viewpoint. Do you feel like that?
I do. In fact, something that I think both of us understand all too well, that with public life, there are expectations placed upon you. And it's sad because political groups and these media outlets, these independent outlets as well, it's not just that they hope, they demand that your voice reinforces the narrative that they already believe. You see, once your words are shaped by, what one side wants to hear, the problem is you lose credibility. And the responsibility of anyone, like someone like yourself who has a television show, you have this podcast, you have a loud voice. The responsibility of someone speaking publicly is to remain independent of those pressures. And my approach to this is simple. I will always say what I believe. I will always say what I know to be accurate and truthful, even if it doesn't perfectly align with the expectations of either political party or the media outlet itself. I mean, basically, CNN, MS Now, they've both basically blacklisted me because they don't like the narrative that I'm portraying. You see, I want to say one more thing here. The problem right now with politics is, again, somewhere along the line, we've all convinced ourselves that if you sit down with someone, right, who has a difference of an opinion, it means that you agree. That's absolutely not true. The truth is that most Americans have far more in common than politics suggest. I guarantee, Lara, that you and I have much more in common in our political views than people would even believe. We both believe America is a country. We both believe that we should have borders. We all believe, right, that a country without borders, quite frankly, isn't a country. We all believe that people should not have the right to come here because they want to, that there's a process. Where we may disagree is the manner to which, for example, ICE is behaving. But that's okay, because we agree on 9 things and disagree on a 10th.
Well, and isn't it sad that, by the way, that's how our country was founded, Michael, right? We were supposed to be, the marketplace of ideas, and we were supposed to come together, and you share your viewpoint about how to achieve a certain goal, and I share mine, and then we kind of come together and hopefully pick the best outcome and solution for moving forward. But it kind of fell off somewhere along the way. And it has turned into a really dirty game of just one side saying, well, we have to be right. The other side, you know what? I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. I want to read something that I saw and I read on your Substack last night, and it kind of blew me away. This has to do with you, and you were kind of the star of the show to some extent, Michael, for both the Attorney General in New York and the DA in New York City. Let me just read this, and I'm going to let you say whatever you want on the other side of it. Here's what you wrote. During my time with prosecutors, both in preparation for and during the trials, it was clear they were interested only in testimony from me that would enable them to convict President Trump. When my testimony was insufficient for a point the prosecution sought to make, prosecutors frequently asked inappropriate leading questions to elicit answers that supported their narrative. I experienced a similar dynamic in the Attorney General's civil case. Letitia James made it publicly known during her 2018 campaign for AG that if elected, she would go after President Trump. Her office made clear that testimony they wanted from me, that the testimony they wanted from me was testimony that would help them do just that. Again, I felt compelled and coerced to deliver what they were seeking. Letitia James and Alvin Bragg may not share the same office or political calendar, but they share the same playbook. Both use their platforms to elevate their profiles to claim the mantle of the officials who, quote, took down Trump. In doing so, they blurred the lines between justice and politics, and in that blur, the credibility of both suffered. Holy smokes, Michael, that's a lot.
Let me say that Substack post that I put out cost me tens of thousands of subscribers on Substack, maybe 50,000 on my YouTube channel, and wreaked complete and total havoc of my media life. And the sickest part is I would do it again tomorrow.
I was about to
because
ask you
here's
that.
the thing. When I was in prison, when I was in Otisville, there was a book that I read, and it was called 3 Felonies a Day. And 3 Felonies a Day is written by a guy named Harvey Silverglate. I think along with Powell. What's her name?
Sydney?
Sidney Powell.
Yeah.
I think she did the forward on it. It was a phenomenal book because what it basically says is that every single one of us commit 3 felonies a day. And what really irritated me a lot and caused me to write that, and again, hindsight being 20/20, a smart person would say, since it caused me so much trouble, that I should stay away from it, but I would not, because it actually bothered me a lot after there were allegations of Letitia James doing mortgage fraud, that case did not go forward, and not for the basis of being factually inaccurate. It had to do with the fact that the person who brought the case was not authorized within which to bring the case. So it's not predicated on the facts of the case, but an intervening circumstance. When they went ahead, when Tish James was campaigning, and this is, to me, the most violative of what I believe is the basis of our Constitution and our democracy, that I'm running on a platform of going after an individual. I don't care who that individual is. I don't care if it's Lara Trump. I don't care if it's Michael Cohen. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I don't care if it's Donald Duck. That's not a platform that a district attorney or an attorney general should be running on. To me, what it is it's almost a political hit squad. And when she was standing there on television and talking about how she was successful in defeating this claim by Trump, again, it's not accurate that it was predicated on the facts, because if she did actually commit the crime of the mortgage fraud, having the 2 different properties, well then, pursuant to the book, 3 felonies a day, she would be held accountable, and she would be guilty to the same extent, for example, that anybody else would be, regardless of it's 10,000, 15,000. Yeah, they said that was a ticky-tack sort of case. Well, how about what was brought up against me. Was that not ticky-tack? Everybody said that it was a ridiculous case to bring. Was it not the same regarding the president? Absolutely. But a crime is a crime, and just because you're the DA or the AG should not mean that you should escape liability and accountability.
Well, just to go back to what you went through, I mean, I don't think people fully appreciate what it must feel like to be in a position like you were in, where you have these very powerful figures within the state of New York and New York City. Essentially, Michael, it kind of sounds like they wanted to use you as a pawn in a game to get Trump, but essentially telling you, I mean, it sounds like you used the word coerced. What happened with that? That's pretty heavy to feel from your own government.
It is a heavy word. It was pressured and coerced are the two words that I used. And I used those words because I was subpoenaed to testify. You know, people don't seem to understand. I testified 7 times before Congress. 7. Some brought on by Republicans, some brought on most by Democrats. 7 congressional hearings, 9 hours a clip, 63 hours. I think I actually may have the Guinness Book of World Records for the most congressional hearings by an individual.
Well, by the way, not to cut you off, but I remember in one of those hearings where there were Democrats trying to get you to say that you saw President Trump essentially being physically abusive to Melania, and you were like, I'm not going to do that.
Do you know how many
it was crazy
on the Democratic side attacked me for not just saying that I don't know, for leaving it, you know, why did you have to be so emphatic?
Wow.
Because I actually investigated it. So my information is firsthand, and I am not going to turn around, and I wasn't going to lie. The same way that there was no Russia P-tape that everybody was talking about. It just doesn't exist. And they say, well, how do you know it doesn't exist? Because I tried to find it. I tried to find it, and it just doesn't exist. Suffice it to say, you're 100% correct, Lara. Here's the problem. The goal, when I said that I was being pressured and coerced, their response to me was, listen, you're under subpoena. And I was. I didn't want to go before Congress. I actually, early on in 2018, when the first, 2017, when the first hearing was to take place, I went to the White House. I spoke to the president in the Oval Office. I said, I don't want to testify. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't want to be involved in this. This is not going to go well. Unfortunately, there was an idiot lawyer that was guiding the president, and so this case ended up where it did. And then one ended up with another, and then so on and so forth. 63 hours worth of that. Two grand juries, two trials, a civil and a criminal, subpoenaed to all of them. So when I say pressured and coerced, if I show you the size of the books that I was given in order to reread to ensure that my testimony, was absolutely accurate, because you have to be perfect, especially when you're up against the President of the United States. And no matter what you say, there's a group that's going to attack you, whether it's your Democrat group or the Republican group, right? These are the things, and I didn't want to. I even asked the prosecutors, I don't feel well. I don't want to do this. I've had enough. I've done enough. Leave me out of it. Mr. Cohen, you're under subpoena.
I have to tell you, I think, look, our family certainly has been through a lot, but I know that your family has too, Michael. And
They suffer.
Well, I really would love to hear how this has been for them. This entire experience must have been extremely stressful for obviously you, but your family as well.
Yeah, you're going to bring tears to my eyes now, because first my parents, my dad now is 90, my mom is 83. I remember they were sitting directly behind me in the courthouse when the judge sentenced me 6 years, 3 years incarceration, 3 years supervised release. It's a 6-year sentence for things that nobody else, for doing an NDA, right? For campaign finance violation. And then I have, of course, my wife of 31 years, right? I missed my 25th anniversary because I was incarcerated. I missed her 50th birthday. I missed it. You want to hear the craziest story? So before going away, I wanted to make her 50th birthday really special. And so I set up and prepaid for a dinner at a very beautiful French restaurant here in Manhattan. It was one of our favorite. And the day before her 50th birthday is when a helicopter fell out of the air
Oh, my
and
God.
landed on the building. I couldn't even get that done.
Oh,
Imagine.
jeez.
There I was. I literally broke down. And you don't cry when you're in prison, so you cry inside, right? There's even in where I was at, which was Otisville, the minimum security camp. You just don't, under any circumstance. It landed on the building that housed the restaurant, so I couldn't.
You can't
even
make
do
that up. That's crazy.
You can't make that up. And then my children, you know, my son at the time was starting college, first year, didn't make it easy on him. My daughter, who had just finished college in terms of jobs and people Googling the kids, really heartbreaking. Because people could be so cruel. We see
People
the
are awful.
cruelty right now every single day.
Yeah.
When you have people who attack you, regardless of knowledge, regardless of facts, they attack you simply because of who you are, of the fact that you're a Democrat, the fact that you're a Republican, the fact that you're Lara Trump.
Don't
They
I know
attack
it?
every single day for no reason, with no justification, and with no empathy.
Well, I'm so curious overall when you look back on all of this, and especially that your Substack excerpt that I read there, really hit hard for me. Do you think that the Manhattan DA and New York AG cases against the president, our family, and the businesses should have been brought, or were these purely politically motivated, Michael?
Well, that's really a question that, of course, you'd have to get out of Tish James and then, of course, Alvin Bragg. It's not, I can't jump into their minds. Me personally, I believe that, as an example, when Tish James used as her platform that she was going to go after the president. I don't care if it's the president. I didn't care if it was Donald Trump. It should never be against anybody, that no politician should run on a platform of going after a specific individual. If you want to go after them because that person committed a crime, do so. But to make it your political platform, that's the part that I take offense to. And do I think that they should have been brought? Many people, under the same circumstances, would also then be brought before the system. And the truth is, very few, if anybody else, in my estimation, ever have been.
That's exactly right. And I think that's the problem. And, you know, when you look at a city like New York, where you had, at that time, especially crime surging, where you had so much else going on, the fact that there were so many resources dedicated to this specific case from the DA, and then, of course, the AG. I mean, the cases just seem, I think, to so many people, very politically motivated. And then to read your Substack where you say that you felt like you were pressured, coerced into ensuring that what they wanted to get accomplished got accomplished. That's a scary thing, I think, for a lot of Americans to hear, Michael, because that's not how it's supposed to work. And you also, in that Substack I read, you talk about how the system is sort of corrupted, right? And that's really the base of all of it. This isn't how it's all supposed to work.
It's not. You see, here's the problem, too. The prosecutors, of course, and it's funny, after I wrote it, a friend of mine, Nick Ackerman, who's the Watergate prosecutor, turned around and called me and he goes, but of course that's the way the system goes. In fact, when I used to be on CNN often, and Ellie Honig was there, and I used to speak to Ellie all the time. He turned around and goes, but Michael, that's the way the system goes. There's a reason why prosecutors have a 98% conviction rate. People don't seem to understand that. Unless you get pulled into the system, you don't realize when the first thing a prosecutor tells you is that you have a 98% chance of losing because my prosecution conviction rate is 98%. Will you be part of that 2%? Can you afford to be part of that 2%? Oh, yeah, by the way, on a Friday, which is the first time I ever heard from the prosecutors, this guy Tom McKay or Nick Roos at the time, Southern District of New York, the very first time I ever heard from any of them was after they spoke to my lawyer on a Friday at 5:30 p.m., where they told him, if Mr. Cohen doesn't come in on Monday at 9 a.m. to plead guilty, we're filing an 80-page indictment that's going to include his wife. And at which point in time, I turned around and I said, no problem. I'll see you on Monday.
See, now that's the thing that I think people don't appreciate as well, is the fact that, it's one thing to target you, which, a lot of people, as you just explained, would argue that no other person would have been targeted in that way, save for who you were and who you worked for. But then to bring your family into it, Michael, that's pretty scary stuff. Sadly, you're not the only person who has felt pressure like that. I know firsthand from talking with other people, this is the way that this is done in the state of New York and the city of New York as well.
It happens, unfortunately, everywhere. And you know what? The entire Justice Department, as it says in the book, 3 felonies a day, needs a complete and total overhaul. These cases, the manner to which prosecutors act, it's wrong. It's not justice. Yes, we may be a country of laws, but there is no justice if the system wants you. And when the system wants you, it doesn't make a difference if you're Michael Cohen, Lara Trump, or President Trump. The system will always get you.
Well, what are you up to these days? Obviously, I know about we talked about your Substack, the YouTube show that you have. What are you doing with your time, and how is life for you now?
Life is very difficult. It's gotten even harder, especially since that article in Substack, and since I refuse to again go out there and embellish and lie and distort the truth about President Trump. I will not. And they say, oh, well, you're just bending the knee for him. Why? Why is bending the knee for him simply by telling the truth? I can't understand that. I can't rationalize it. I do a lot of writing. I do all my own writing even on my Mea Culpa podcast. This, by the way, this caused me to lose even my production company that I was with for 6 years. I've now found a new one called True Wave Entertainment. In fact, it's given me the opportunity. I'm in the process of working with Rumble right now and Laura Loomer to create a podcast of our own called Across the Aisle, where people can have a conversation from different sides of the aisle where we understand and acknowledge just how much we really have more in common and stop the divisiveness, stop the attacks. Everything that the president says does not have to be attacked by the left, nor does it also have to be acknowledged and agreed to by the right. We can all turn around and say, yes, this is the right thing. He's doing the right thing. If President Trump created the cure tomorrow for cancer, the far left would turn around, and many would turn around and say, yeah, but he didn't create the cure for the common cold.
Yeah, no, he talks about this all the time. He says, I could cure cancer, and they would still hate me, and they would still attack me.
Right, but he needs the second half of that line. He didn't create the common cold.
Right, it's crazy.
He didn't create the cure for the common cold.
You're so right. Well, listen, I love the idea of that. I am absolutely for bridging and bringing people together, because I think we have to. I think we all want this country to be successful, and we're only going to get there by people coming together. And like you've said, I think twice now, Michael, realizing we have more in common than we do different. And I think at the end of the day, that's a great reminder to all of us out there. So good luck with what you hopefully will have coming up very soon. What do you want people, though, who listen to this podcast today to take away from you choosing to sit down and talk with me today? What do you hope people learn?
Because we're really just one country. We're one people. We have situations like what's going on right now with Iran and elsewhere that we need to be united. If we can't be united amongst ourselves, how do we then create a force against countries like Iran, who are and have been nuclear determined since 1973? If we
You're
can't
right.
be united
I totally
together,
agree with you.
then we will
It should
fall.
be a unanimous
And democracy is too
situation
important
that
for
we
the
all
world.
say we want to protect this country. We want to ensure the future is bright. But sadly, somewhere along the way, it seems like we got a little off track. I will say I don't think it's ever too late. I don't ever think it's too late to do the right thing, to come together, to again bridge the gap between, I think, two parties that sadly have seemed to drift far apart. And I want to say thank you, Michael. Thank you for reaching out to me yesterday. It truly, I said it's great to hear from you. It was great to hear from you. I like making amends. I like keeping positive relationships with people. And I really appreciate you being willing to sit down and talk with me in such a public way. I think it's really important for people to hear what you went through, to hear what you witnessed and experienced, how that's been for you, what it's done to you and your family. And I hope that there's more of this to come. So again, thank you. Is there anything that you wanted to say coming on today that I didn't ask you about?
I'm sure you and I will have more opportunities to speak. I hope you invite me on to your Fox program. Congrats on the great ratings and all.
Thank you.
There's much more for us to talk about. Unfortunately,
Amen.
every single day there's additional chaos that we all have to live through. And by the way, imagine how much easier living through all of this chaos would be if we stood united as one country.
I love the sound of that. Let's make that the goal. Michael Cohen, thank you so much for joining
Lara,
me
great
here
to see
on The
you.
Right View. So great to see you, and much more to
Send
come.
my regards
So
to everybody, please. To
I
Don,
will.
to Eric, to Ivanka.
I absolutely will. Thank you
Kiss
so
the
much
kids-
for
kiss
joining
the
us
kids for
today.
me, would you?
I will. Thank you, Michael. Great to see you.
Great to see you as well.
Thank you. Have you seen these prices? Of course, I'm talking about precious metals. Gold and silver have been on an absolute tear, breaking record after record. How far will they go? No one knows for sure. There will be some pullbacks along the way, but if you want to learn why gold and silver have exploded in price and why they could possibly explode even higher in 2026, then I have the perfect guide for you. It's from my partners over at Goldco. They're an amazing company, so head over to LaraLikesGold.com to get your free 2026 gold and silver kit. Plus, you could get up to 10% back free gold or silver just for getting started. That's right, 10% back. There isn't a better deal out there. So go to LaraLikesGold.com for details. That's LaraLikesGold.com. Well, I'm so excited to share something that has really impacted my daily life. If you find yourself struggling with low energy, brain fog, pesky colds, or waking up feeling stiff and achy, you need to look into Strong Cell. For me, focus is essential, and Strong Cell keeps me sharp and laser focused. Plus, it provides me with clean, natural energy. No jitters, no weird spikes, and definitely no afternoon crash. I just feel alive. What really makes Strong Cell stand out is its star ingredient, NADH. This is a powerful compound that fuels every single cell in our bodies. Think of it as the spark plug for cellular energy. Unfortunately, as we age, our levels of NADH start to decline. And with over 30 trillion cells in our bodies, it's clear that healthier cells translate to a healthier, more vibrant me. Strong Cell doesn't just throw random ingredients together hoping for results. It uses a proprietary delivery system designed to ensure that those ingredients actually reach your cells. That's where they need to be to work their magic. This is important because so many supplements are just expensive powders without effective delivery. The best part? You can try Strong Cell completely risk-free. If it doesn't work for you, there's a guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. If you're tired of feeling drained, struggling with brain fog, or simply not feeling like your best self, I strongly encourage you to check out Strong Cell now. Visit strongcell.com and use discount code LARA to get 20% off your order. Remember, you can try it completely risk-free. That's strongcell.com, discount code LARA. Don't just take my word for it. Do your research. I did, and that's why I chose Strong Cell. Tonight we're joined by retired U.S. Army Colonel and President of Project Sentinel, my friend Tony Schaefer. Tony,
Hey, Laura.
I feel like I've known you for so long. We go way back, many campaigns now. So I know you have a very deep background in intelligence, but maybe for our viewers, Tell us about your background in it and really kind of how it's shaped your views on the threats specifically from Iran over the years.
So I joined at a very young age the Reagan administration as a very young operative. I was a lieutenant doing spy stuff, counterterrorism stuff, and I went on from there to become a military case officer. We are trained by CIA, but we work for DOD, or Department of War, I should say now. And
yeah,
so
I love the
that's
new
been
term,
my
Department of War.
yeah, and so the clarification that's I need to make here is that we work for the good guys, which is the Pentagon, not for CIA, who sometimes wanders off the reservation. Just saying. So, for those who are curious, they can pick up, and we've talked about this before. My book, Operation Dark Heart, it covers my time in Afghanistan as the chief of Army military, basically our clandestine operations in Afghanistan, and some other stunt things that happened. And for those who are actually curious about kind of spy stuff, I encourage you to go to the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. One of the guys who runs it, Colonel Chris Costa, was the special operations coordinator for President Trump during his first term. Anyway, for better or for worse, you can Google it, Tony Schaefer, Colonel. Bond moment. My Bond moment is actually in the Spy Museum, so you guys can go check.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and by the way, you've got an open invitation, Laura. Whenever you're up there, we'll get you in for a special
That's
tour.
not the one at the CIA, is it?
No. The one at the CIA was closed years ago, and this new one is purpose built. It's a 4-story building on LaFont Plaza. It's huge.
Okay.
And so you've got an
gonna
open
check it out.
invitation,
I
and
love
Chris
that.
and I would be happy to give you a tour. Anyway, so that's the kind of the summary of my background. So what pertains to our conversation, as you know, I advise the campaign on national security. The issue is I don't believe we've had enough aggressive application of intelligence collection and military operations that are actually needed to fulfill U.S. policy. And here goes President Trump, and he just starts doing stuff. And I think he recognizes the power of intelligence and the need to use military operations as a means of accomplishing policy goals. And that's what he's doing.
Yeah, well, and because you were so deep into kind of this intelligence space, you learned a lot, Tony, that so many of us really don't know about, right? The average American understood for a long time that Iran was no good, that,
Right.
their leadership there was funding proxies around the region,
Absolutely.
and that obviously their goal was to develop a nuclear weapon. But tell us, what can you tell us that maybe people for a long time, or maybe still don't really realize about Iran? You probably knew a long time before many of us that they were a big problem.
We did. We were studying this, and we're trying to sound the warning bells during the Obama administration. One of the notable features of the Iranians being bad guys, they dealt with other bad guys. One of those bad guys was North Korea. Laura, what the American public didn't understand, and we were trying to get out and we weren't permitted, was to allow people to know that all this money that the Obama administration was giving Iran, it was going to North Korea. They were basically paying the North Koreans to help them kind of take shortcuts to develop their nuclear program. Now, I believe this, and I've said this to you, and I'm going to say it publicly again. I think that the Iranians probably had 1 or 2 nuclear weapons that were essentially given to them by the North Koreans for purposes of copying. For any number of reasons, they were never successful in copying multiple copies. There's still discussion, which I think that's why we're in the middle of combat operations now, about where that material went. I think we're going to come to find that they had either completed or near completed at least a couple of weapons. And I do believe, this is one of the you probably get this too. Oh, President Trump promised no new wars. Like, no, he didn't say that. He promised no long wars. He didn't say he wouldn't use military force to protect the American people. So I do believe, Laura, based on my direct knowledge during the Obama years, and we worked with the first administration on this, trying to warn people that the Iranians probably were on the fast track to develop multiple weapons. And what was worse, and this is why it's important, they weren't only going to develop weapons, they're going to take them and put them on their ballistic missiles, which is another big target of ours right now, and use those to go after the Sunni and Israelis. It's no accident that the Iranians struck all of their neighbors when we attacked them, because that was the plan all along. They didn't just wake up and recognize they were being attacked, Laura, and then, we got to reprogram everything to attack our neighbors. No. if you look at the time we attacked them, within hours, they were attacking their neighbors. That was always the plan. Just saying.
Yeah, no, and it's an amazing time. I continue, Tony, to think about the fact that so many people criticize President Trump and sort of his lack of experience in foreign affairs, and that was the one thing. Whenever he was compared to Hillary Clinton, they say, "Oh, well, she has all this experience. She was the Secretary of State. This man has only been, a businessman and a television star." And it's incredible to see this president do things that for so long, so many people in his position or around the president recognized was kind of a necessity. We needed to do something about Iran.
Right.
We needed to ensure they weren't going to develop a nuclear weapon. Now, it's terrifying, actually, to hear you say that the North Koreans probably gave them something to copy and that they copied a version of it. Is that like a dirty bomb? Like, when I hear people talk about the fact, what does that mean? Like, what could they do now?
Yeah.
We've obviously targeted them. We saw the, Midnight Hammer operation at least destroy what we believe was most of their capability. What's going on with where do you think things stand right now?
Yeah, let me explain it in detail. And by the way, just to hit that point about President Trump, knowing the man, I don't know him as well as you, but knowing him the way I do, he is very instinctive in a good way. And I think he was misled by certain people the first term, which I told him to his face to walk back. It's like, I don't think you had the best and brightest giving you some of the advice. Just saying. Anyway,
he would agree with you on that, Tony, for
well,
sure.
We could talk about that another day. But my point being, when people talk about Hillary and all of her experience, anytime they talk about all of her years of experience, I said, yeah, it was all bad. It was all terrible. So you don't want to look there. But let's go back to the topic of. So the issue is this, and I got a degree in environmental studies, so I actually have had to study this. The issue is uranium. What level of uranium do you have to use for peaceful purposes? 3 to 5% enrichment. That's it, Laura. 3 to 5%. It takes a very low enrichment level, and anything above 5, you start getting into highly enriched. Highly enriched uranium is considered at 20%. Anywhere along that spectrum, then you can develop a dirty bomb. That is to say that anything above 3 to 5%, where you can put it with a conventional explosive and blow it up, you would contaminate the environment with radiation. That's a dirty bomb. And the Iranians could actually still do that with the stockpile they have. That's why we're working so hard to track down what they have. The Iranians were at 80%. 80%, Laura. That's weapons grade. So the fact that they kept saying, "Oh, this is for peaceful purposes," like, no, it's not. We know it's not.
There's no other reason you would have that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I just get frustrated with pundits who don't actually go through and try to explain this clearly. It's like, look, they don't need to have that level of enrichment, period. And I think that's why President Trump, being smarter than the average bear, said, yeah, this makes sense to me. We can't allow this. And one other factor here I think is important for your audience to understand is that the basic format of the nation, the theocracy, was based on a death cult. And I'm trying not to be over the top. People sometimes get upset. But the whole concept of the Shia religion is an offshoot of Islam. The other is Sunni. That's the Arabs. Laura, the Shia believed that to bring back their version of Jesus Christ, the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, that they had to create conditions for the apocalypse. So this was our concern. It's like they were like Jim Jones, but wanting to get nuclear weapons. It's not going to be Kool-Aid. It's going to be nuclear weapons. And the idea here, and their belief, and this is why they were never deterred. You couldn't buy them off. You couldn't intimidate them. They were determined because they thought they were protected by their God to get to the point of where they could develop weapons and use them to create the apocalypse to have their savior return. It's really that simple. And so whenever, President Trump talks about them being religious extremists, he's not kidding. This is as extreme as you can get. And that's why they were not deterred. All the money that Obama gave them to slow them down, it didn't slow them down. They just thought that they were being blessed by God, their God, by having a stupid president give them all this money to help them fulfill their prophecy. That's how bad this all was.
Yeah, well, and you're right. I mean, this is this sort of ideology does not at any point say, well, you know what, maybe we'll put a hold on this.
No.
Maybe we're headed down the wrong path.
No.
There was an end goal ultimately. I mean, they chant death to America and death
Yes.
to Israel. They call us the big Satan in America, and they call Israel the little Satan.
Right. Absolutely.
It's not a joke, Tony, right? Like, that's what these people believe.
They're-
And so it seems
Take them at their word. Take them at their word.
take them at their
Absolutely.
word. From your expertise, though, I have, it seems pretty clear this president, and I want you to weigh in on this and tell me what you think, has kind of two objectives in terms of what's going on in Iran right now. Obviously, the first objective and the main objective was to ensure that they never developed a nuclear weapon.
Correct.
That was Operation Midnight Hammer. That was going in this time again and ensuring that they blew up any place where, or targeted any place where that could potentially be going on. But twofold and kind of in partnership with that, and it kind of piggybacks on what you just said, was also the fact that it doesn't matter how many times a country goes in and demolishes their nuclear program and tries to destroy it, they will continue going back and rebuilding it because of what you just said. And so it seems like the other objective of this whole mission right now is to ensure that there is some change there. And I know that, you know, I guess regime change is the word that I want to use, or the term I want to use, but the president hasn't really said that. But it seems like, Tony, that's the only way that you get around this, is freeing the Iranian people there from this regime, which has oppressed them, which has been absolutely horrific, which has obviously funded all of this terrorism in and around the region there. And I think that's kind of the other side of the coin here. That's the other goal of Epic Fury.
Yeah. So you're completely correct. The tactical objective is to destroy the nuclear program. The operational objective is to make sure that the government of Iran can never be permitted to move forward with its completely holistically extreme view of them being the chosen ones by Allah to basically bring about end times to kill us. So they're not going to be deterred, and I think that's why regime change in some form. And they did say that the government of Iran can never be permitted to have nuclear weapons or continue to trouble its neighbors. So does that mean regime change? It probably will. And I think that's where Pete Hegseth gave that update today and kind of talked about where they're going. But Laura, I would argue there's a third strategic objective that President Trump is doing, and that is actually going after the forces of the globalists. Remember, at the same time we're doing Iran, we were in Ecuador, we just did Venezuela. We're putting pressure on a number of places which will allow us, the United States, through our policies, to actually dominate the world. One of the issues that President Trump's trying to fix is the fact that Lloyd's of London, a handful of other institutions, have always played one side against the other, like the Gulf. He was brilliant when Lloyd's of London said, we're not going to insure ships, basically believing they were going to get the price of oil to $300 a barrel. And he said, we'll insure the ships. Thank you. We'll do it. In the past, Laura, we've always kowtowed to this larger global initiative. It's like, we don't have to. And if you notice, the price of oil spiked about $118. It's back down to $85, $86 right now. Because of President Trump's brilliance on this, I think we're going to get through this without all the traditional wailing, gnashing of teeth, and rising prices, because he's actually playing the long game and using these other engagements, Venezuela, Ecuador, going after the drug guys, cartels, actually going after and trying to stop illegal and illicit oil sales, making it subordinated to our interests. That's what he's actually going to do long term. So it's a threefer. He's doing the tactical piece, doing the operational piece, but I think he's got an eye on the strategic effects of what he can do to change the trajectory of the world for making America great again.
I would also argue you could probably lump in there China and Russia as well, right? Because they're impacted by all of this.
Absolutely. Well, China more than Russia, because all the talk, all this oil we're talking about, it's normally going to the Chinese. So President Trump has said that he's willing to accept Pete Hegseth published the defense strategic guidance. We're willing to accept three spheres of influence: Russia, China, the United States. And that means we set up the terms for that. And basically, none of those, we don't all get along, but this is the key. We're not globalists. And so the idea here is creating competition. President Trump's all about competition. He's not
Right.
about dominance. So I think he's trying to set up conditions for literally most of the world to win. And the traditional London-based globalists, well, they're not going to do so well, to include the EU. They're just not going to go well in all of this. So.
Well, as it relates to Operation Epic Fury, the whole idea behind it, according to the president and Secretary of War, is that this isn't something that they want to be long term. They have said that
No.
they want that it's been,
Right.
it could be like 6 weeks maybe that we could see an end to this. And I think I've heard you kind of speak to the same, that maybe
Yeah.
within weeks we're going to see this all wrap up. What targets do we already know that maybe have been destroyed, degraded? Kind of where do you think things stand? And I guess from a military perspective, there's been a lot that's already been destroyed in Iran. I mean,
Yeah.
they're way down on launching any of their ICBMs. They're way down on personnel to do more damage. Where do you think things stand there right now?
So the actual ability of Iran to launch ballistic missiles and long range weapons has been diminished to the point of where they started off with 400 TELs, which are the surface the ballistic missile launchers, are down to about 40. Doesn't mean they're not a threat, but they're reduced greatly. Their ability to launch their Shahab drones also greatly reduced because they just can't launch them. We've hit all the sites. They have no ability to regenerate them right now. So that's another area. So I'm going to stick with my forecast that we're going to be done by mid-month. This is not going to take till April 1st. I
Wow.
think we're going to be done by mid-month because we're running out of targets, literally. And I think at this point that the three things we're going after are continuing to reduce, that military term for blow up, the TELs. We're going to try to get them to zero. I think we'll get near zero by this weekend. And then we're going to go about trying to make sure we can find and stop any potential use of their uranium. I don't think we got it all in the attack before. I think we're going to go track it down. And while I don't think we have a lot of boots on the ground, we have a few boots on the ground looking at, remote locations, trying to figure out where things are hidden. And that's ongoing as we speak. I think that'll continue. And third, and probably the most important category, is leadership targets. The new leader has been warned by President Trump, gee, you better figure out how to talk to us and comply with our objectives, or else you're going to follow the way of the 40 other guys that died the first day. And I don't think President Trump's joking. I think we can track these guys down. So I think right now we're trying to soften up the theocracy so that the people can actually come in and take its place. And I'll say this as a caveat. We may not see regime change by the time we stop combat operations. Remember, Laura, the Berlin Wall didn't fall until a year after President Reagan left office,
right.
just saying. So sometimes these things will have a momentum all to their own. So I do believe he's going to keep his word. We're not going to see a long, protracted war, but the effort to remove and replace the Islamic governance, the theocracy in Iran, won't end even if we end combat operations.
Well, the president has said that he needs unconditional surrender, right, from
That's right.
Iran. And so I'm kind of curious, what do you think that looks like? First of all, how realistic do you think that is? And what does victory look like in your eyes from an intelligence perspective, from a security perspective? How do you see a win here for the United States and really for the world?
I think an ending of hostilities based on our terms, and President Trump has kind of referred to how we ended the war with Japan, and I think that's a good format to look at. We allowed the emperor to stay in place in Japan, if you recall, in August of '45 when the Japanese surrendered. I think that's kind of what we're looking at right now. It's like, okay, you're done. You can't actually wage warfare, and it's kind of almost hilarious when you hear the IRGC saying, "Oh, we're going to end this on our terms." Like, yeah, you're not. But I think we're getting close to the point of where the government will have no ability to do anything. And the government, they're close to it now. They're close to the point they can't govern, and they understand that. So I think, again, even if we stop combat operations within the next couple of weeks, I think the government itself is going to say enough's enough. They've already kind of hinted they want to talk. I think President Trump, with another five to 6 days of hard attacks, they're going to be willing to surrender. Now, what does victory look like? Victory looks like a government that cannot act on its very extreme views of trying to bring about the apocalypse. That's number one. Number two, they cannot be allowed to have enough financing and resources to finance the Houthi, Hezbollah, and Hamas. That's another requirement. You cannot continue to do things via proxies. And this is one of the things I get frustrated with, and it's in my book too, Lara, is that we were fighting the Iranians as far back as the early days of the war on terror. I actually, it's in the book, we had to go and interrogate an individual who was the brother of an IRGC operative. And he was a U.S. citizen, by the way. It took us 3 days to break the guy. We didn't torture him, just saying. We were able to interrogate him and get him to break. And he told us that the Iranians were funding the insurgency against us, the Americans, as early as August of 2003 in Afghanistan. Think about that. So I don't want to hear this, oh, the Iranians weren't doing things. They were. They were killing Americans. Pete Hegseth said it in one of his latest updates about this, and he's correct. So they can never be allowed to do that again, Laura, at all. And then third, and I think ultimately, is to reform their ability to torture their own people. I mean, I don't know in what land of reason allowing a government to kill 30,000 of its own people who are simply wanting a better life is acceptable in the terms of global law or common sense. So those are the things that I think, if we can assure those things are done, those will be victory in my eyes.
Well, listen, you never please all the people all the time. And this president knows that. It's been very interesting to me, Tony, to see the way that a lot of folks who at one time or another championed this president have been very unhappy with the situation in Iran and very critical of this president. I'm curious your thoughts on that, because look, this president has been very clear. His number one focus is on protecting the American people. He is America first. And that is why this was a necessity, because every other president seemed to kick the can, right? You had Obama sending pallets of cash there. You had Biden sent more cash, obviously, to Iran, did absolutely nothing about it, weakened us on the world stage. And there had to be a line drawn and somebody to take action. And no, it's not perfect. And we are so sad for the 7 service members who we know have lost their lives so far. It's awful. And we never want to see that happen. But you have to do something. And this is a president who, whether it's with Venezuela and Maduro, like you just referenced, whether we're talking about just shutting down our southern border, kicking out, the illegal immigrants who are criminals and should never have been in our country in the first place, or targeting Iran and making sure that they can't develop a nuclear weapon now or anytime in the future, somebody had to do it. So what is your take, or what is your thought on these people who've been incredibly critical about this president taking this position with Iran?
Well, I'm going to say it, and I don't think he'll get upset if I say this. He just doesn't care. He's going to do what he thinks is best.
He's going to do what's right. That's exactly it.
It's like, look, he's not a politician. He's always said, look, my job is to do what's best for the American people. And Laura, I think certain people, I know you're talking about, and some of those people are critical of the president, friends of mine, just saying. Yeah. They're wrong. The president never said he would not use American capabilities to ensure America's safety. He never said he wouldn't do that. And so when they get, I'm shocked that he's using military operations. He understands military operations. That's why he put like-minded individuals like Pete Hegseth in charge. Pete is not tied to some defense contractor hoping for some job after. He's there to do the job the president wants him to do, which is have maximum lethality and effectiveness in the Pentagon. That's it. So when you look at the situation, to me, it makes perfect sense. And I'm not saying this because Pete Hegseth is a friend of mine. I'm saying because he's been hired to do a job, and he's doing it. And regarding past presidents, Laura, they all wanted to fit in. Remember how Obama and Biden, they were all seen by the world community. They're good guys. President Trump's not a good guy. That's not his job. His job is to get things done. I get it. Let me say this as part of why people don't understand Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a builder. If you read his book, I always tell, read his book, read The Art of the Deal. But more importantly, Laura, he was a builder. He was a guy that thrived in one of the most difficult cities on the planet to get things done, New York City. And did people get upset with him? Absolutely. But he built things. He got things done. Look at all the places he has built, amazing hotels and other buildings. To be a builder you have to have a certain attitude and understanding of how to accomplish things. And sometimes you got to step on people's toes. Well, he's not afraid to do that. And so I applaud him for that. Even some of his own, some of MAGA is upset with him. That's okay.
Yes.
I think they're going to be happy in the end. I'm a Reagan guy, and I'm happy with what he's doing. So I'm just saying, Laura, they need to understand the man, that his objectives is not to fit in, to be a good old boy, to fit in with the Europeans. It's to lead the Europeans and tell them, either you get on board with what's best for the world, or else we're just going to leave you behind. And I hate to be that blunt, but I think that's kind of the answer that President Trump is trying to provide him. So.
You're exactly right. He has also been a negotiator his entire life as a businessman. And believe me, he knows how to read people. And he sees people, parts of them that I don't even know that they see in themselves. And he has a great instinct when it comes to how to deal with certain types of people, how to navigate certain situations. It's one of the reasons he's been as successful, I think, as he's been throughout his whole life. Tony, you're awesome. Thank you so much for all the great detail and information. Please keep up the great stuff, and we would love to have you back, hopefully at the end of this entire situation, and break it all down for us again.
Let's hope everything goes well. I'm sure it will, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks, Laura.
Amen, my friend. All right, Tony Schaefer, thank you so much for joining us. To everybody at home, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. We'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View. And I won't back down.